Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be diving back into the world of the Sega Master System, Sega's 8-bit powerhouse that often sat in the shadow of the NES, well it did, let's be honest. While it never reached the same level of fame worldwide, the Master System actually had a fantastic library of games, and many of which are still worth checking out today. So today we're going to look at some underrated gems that may have flew under your radar. As always, I don't know if you know them. If you do, let me know in the comments. You may have never heard of these before, but let me know your thoughts as always. If you want to help the show and think I deserve it, please hit that like and subscribe button to help the channel grow. And if you listen to on mobile, please give that hype because it helps push up small little content creators like me. Retro Wars is also a weekly podcast where this week we are looking at Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku for the Game Boy Advance, unfortunately. And we've also got a $1 a month Patreon where you can help me and my family save for our own house, get involved with the podcast and get your own additional show. Right, let's get into it, shall we? 7 underrated games for the Sega Master System. Impossible Mission. Impossible Mission on the Sega Master System is a fascinating case of a game caught between innovation and frustration. One that retains a reputation as both a technological marvel of its time and an exercise in patience testing design, so you're not going to throw it out the window. Originally released in 1984 for the Commodore 64, this game was ported to numerous systems, including the Master System in 1988, bringing its blend of platforming, puzzle solving and espionage action to a console audience. Now what made it especially notable is how ambitious it was for the era, mixing cerebral gameplay with action elements in a way that was years ahead of many of its contemporaries. But while its legacy is tied to innovative designs, the Master System port in particular shows both the brilliance and the limitations of that design. The idea is simple but compelling. You play as a secret agent tasked with infiltrating the underground lair of the evil genius Elvin Atombender. What a name. Elvin has been plotting world domination, and to stop him, the player must search through a massive complex to assemble the key pieces of a puzzle that unlock the computer system controlling his schemes. That just seems like a really shit plan. The twist is that the entire mission is timed, giving you just 6 real-world hours to complete it. Every misstep, mistake, or death subtracts precious time, adding enormous tension to every action you take, or at least you say you're going to get it done in the afternoon. Unlike straightforward action platforms of the era, this one demanded your thinking combined with that precision movement, which set it apart. The gameplay revolves around searching the rooms for those puzzle pieces while avoiding deadly security robots. Each room is filled with furniture and objects that can be searched, everything from desks to bookcases to cabinets, and might contain that vital fragment of the code needed to defeat Elvin. However, searching isn't instantaneous, it takes bloody time, and while you're searching, the robots are going to be looking for you. These enemies don't really fire bullets or attack in a conventional way, but instead patrol in strict patterns, often positioning so one wrong move results in instant death, which is a bit harsh. Colliding with a robot or falling down a pit results in your agent screaming as he plummets, and more of that time is going to be shaved off. One of the most remarkable aspects of the game is its randomization. Each time you play, the locations of the puzzle pieces changed and the robot patterns were altered. This means you're not going to be Googling it or YouTubing it to see if you can find the complete playthrough. And while that might be frustrating for players like me, it's pretty good for people who just want a unique challenge every single time. Now when comparing it to the Commodore 64 version, it looks sharper on the Master System, more colourful environments, and smoother character animations compared to other 8-bit versions. The robots are also clearly defined and the room layouts keep exploration visually interesting. However, some of that game's original fluid animation and atmosphere was lost in translation. Still, for console owners who don't have access to the Commodore 64, the Master System's a really good way of playing it. And despite those innovations, the game is infamous for its difficulty. The time limit, the precision required for jumps, and the unforgiving nature of the killer robots all combine to make success elusive. Players never really saw the ending, and some critics argue the challenge crossed the line from stimulating to unfair, that I'm going to kick you out the window. Yet in a way, this brutal difficulty contributed to the game's mystique. Beating Impossible Mission wasn't just finishing a game, it was an accomplishment worthy of bragging rights, and to be honest, back in those days, they're probably far between. I'd be swinging around Master System control like I just don't care. It does stand as a bit of a relic and a pioneer. It did demonstrate how games could be more than simple high-score chases, weaving exploration, logic, and tension into one package. The problem is it going to survive the day without you kicking it through the window? Ninja Gaiden. Yes, I'm not misreading that. Ninja Gaiden for the Sega Master System. Did you know this was even a thing? Well, it's actually a completely unique version compared to its NES counterpart. Released in '92, this version wasn't simply just a port of the NES trilogy, it was a completely original game developed specifically for Sega's 8-bit console. Now that in itself was unusual, as many third-party developers tend to just recycle the NES material for Sega systems, but Tecmo decided, nah, we're going to make a fresh adventure. While it does retain the series' fast-paced action platforming core, this Master System entry adds its own twists in the story, level design and gameplay mechanics, making it a definite underrated title in the system's later library. The story of the Master System Ninja Gaiden isn't directly tied to the narrative of Ryu Hayabusa's NES saga, but it still fits within a familiar framework. Once again, you play as the Dragon Ninja seeking vengeance against the forces of evil who threaten both his family and balance of the world. But in this installment, Ryu travels across diverse lands after his village is destroyed by a sinister warlord named Blademus. That's a shit name. Who seeks to unleash dark power and dominate everything in his path, apart from his name. While the cutscenes aren't as cinematic or as groundbreaking as the NES version, which was absolutely ridiculously good for its time, they still provide enough context to push the player forward and maintain that pulpy ninja movie vibe. But the gameplay is where it shines. Like the NES games, it's a side-scrolling action platformer where precise controls, quick reflexes and mastery of Ryu's abilities are essential. However, unlike the notoriously punishing NES trilogy, this version is a lot more forgiving. The controls are tight, but the hit detection is fairer and enemies less overwhelming, especially those fucking birds. Instead of frustrating players and endless knockback into pits, the bane of many NES fans' experiences, this iteration feels more approachable, striking a balance between challenge and accessibility. For newcomers of the series, this might be a way to be a ninja without the crushing difficulty that Tecmo is known for. Ryu still has his iconic katana, and he can use shurikens and fire wheels to deal with tougher enemies or ranged threats. The Master System's hardware allows these attacks to animate smoothly, and Ryu feels agile, being able to leap, climb walls, and slash with precision. Unlike the NES games, it does have a variety of enemies, from soldiers and mythical beasts, while boss fights that demand pattern recognition and a smart use of sub-weapons. The thing is though, it doesn't quite reach the adrenaline-pumping chaos of the NES original, but it still provides a sense of urgency and speed that's true to the brand. Visually, this game is a standout for the Master System's late-era highlights. From great sprite work, Ryu himself is fantastic and looks really good on the system, especially the bosses as well. They boast great designs, they look imitating, they look memorable, and in reality it's kind of a more like a brighter and slightly cleaner presentation than that gritty version that the NES wanted. But however, reception was somewhat muted, largely because the Master System was on its way out. By 1992, the NES and even the Sega Mega Drive, Genesis, were already far more dominant platforms, meaning this game was just completely flying under the radar. For those who did play it, however, it was often praised as one of the most polished, enjoyable Master System action titles. Critics also liked the smoother difficulty curve compared to the NES version, as well as its strong visuals, but just noted that it lacked the sheer intensity and storytelling punch of its Nintendo siblings. Today, it's definitely a hidden gem. It's a curiosity in the series' history, and often it doesn't get talked about because all we ever talk about is the NES trilogy, but it's still worthy of attention for how it managed to carve its own identity. And for Master System fans, it represents one of the console's better late releases, showcasing how developers could still extract impressive performance from Sega's 8-bit hardware. Ultima IV. Ultima IV: Quest of the Avatar on the Sega Master System is a remarkable chapter in gaming history, not only because it brought one of the most influential RPGs to a home console, but also it did so with surprisingly faithfulness and accessibility. Released in 1990, this version was tailored specifically to actually work on the 8-bit hardware, making it one of the most ambitious role-playing experiences available at the time. While other RPGs of the time often focused on defeating the ultimate villain or saving the world from destruction, Ultima IV pioneered a different sort of quest, one centered on moral growth, self-discovery, and embodying virtues. To be honest, that's not me. I'm not that sort of person. I don't focus on me, probably why I have Domino's most days and I'm a fat bugger. For console players, this is a bold and refreshing departure from the norm, and it helps set the Master System apart with a genuinely deep role-playing experience. The game itself doesn't ask you to slay a final boss or stop an apocalypse, but instead prove yourself worthy of becoming the Avatar, the paragon of virtue whose example will guide the people. This moral quest was revolutionary, and on the Master System, and it presented in a way that was both engaging and accessible, giving console gamers a taste of the philosophical depth that made the series famous on the PC. Gameplay unfolds in a familiar top-down perspective, with players navigating an overworld map with towns, dungeons and shrines. The player creates a character by answering moral dilemmas at the start of the game, which determines their class and starting virtue path. Do you pick hamburgers or pizza, Manchester United or Manchester City, milk chocolate or dark chocolate, Pokemon or Digimon? These are all extremely difficult questions. This quiz-like introduction feels far deeper than most RPGs openings of the era and gives you a sense of role-playing before you even step into the land. Unlike many RPGs at the time, Ultima IV doesn't really hold your hand. You're free to explore, but progression requires patience, note-taking, and real thought about what your actions align with the virtues. The Combat takes place in a turn-based tactical format where your party and enemies are positioned on a small battlefield. Each member of the group has unique abilities, and battles demand careful positioning and strategic use of the spells and weapons. While the graphics are simple compared to later RPGs, the Master System version does a solid job of translating the mechanics of the original PC game into a console-friendly experience. These encounters can be challenging, and the game requires resource management, but it never feels unfair. Instead, it rewards thoughtful planning. Visually, the game is quite impressive for an 8-bit console RPG. The overworld's colourful, and distinct terrain types, towns, and landmarks give Britannia a sense of place. Towns are lively, filled with NPCs who provide hints, lore, or tests of your virtue through dialogue. Dungeons shift to a first-person perspective with walls, monsters, and traps rendered in simple but effective 3D-like visuals. These sections actually capture the tension of exploration remarkably well for the hardware, as you never quite know what lies around the next corner. Now, while it does lack the fine details of the computer versions, it makes up for it with clarity and charm, ensuring players always know where they are and what they're facing. Reception at the time highlighted how unusual and ambitious it was for a console RPG. Many Master System games lean towards arcade-styled action or simplified adventures, but Ultima IV offered a sprawling quest that could take dozens of hours to complete. Critics and players who are used to simpler console experiences sometimes found this a little bit daunting, but RPG fans recognise it as a major achievement, bringing computer-style depth to a Sega console in a way that very few titles attempted. Today, it's seen as one of the crown jewels for the RPG enthusiasts. It remains one of the most faithful and fully realised ports of a Western computer RPG onto an 8-bit home system. Its focus on morality and role-playing choices still feel ahead of its time, and for Master System collectors, it's often regarded as one of the must-have titles. While the series is most commonly remembered on computers, this version allowed Sega fans to experience one of the gaming's most important RPGs in a format that fit perfectly in the living room. Master of Darkness. Master of Darkness on the Sega Master System is often remembered as Sega's answers to Castlevania, and while that comparison is unavoidable, it manages to carve out its own identity with its eerie setting, polished gameplay, and unique twist on gothic horror. Released in 1992, which was very late in the Master System's life cycle, the game gave Sega owners a taste of the atmospheric action platforming that Nintendo fans had long enjoyed with Konami's vampire-slaying series. But instead of simply being a shallow imitation, it built on familiar mechanics with new weapons, an intriguing Victorian backdrop, and a style all of its own. The plot is set in 19th century London, which is my home, during the reign of Queen Victoria, and it cleverly draws from Gothic literature and real-world myths. You play as Dr. Ferdinand Social. That's a crap name as well. A psychologist who becomes entangled in a wave of brutal murders in the city, killing that echoes the real-life Jack the Ripper crimes. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear there's something supernatural behind the carnage, with Dracula himself pulling the strings. It's a setting that feels distinct from Castlevania's medieval castles, using foggy London streets, gas lamps, and the occult themes to give the adventure a chilling but fresh atmosphere. Gameplay follows a side-scrolling action platformer template, but it handles things a little bit differently than the Belmonts. Instead of relying on a whip, Dr. Social, still weird, uses a variety of melee weapons such as knives, swords, and even canes. They each have their own range and attack speed. Secondary weapons like pistols and bombs can also be collected, adding a layer of strategy to combat. This gives players the flexibility in how they actually want to tackle the enemies, allowing them to choose the weapon that best suits their playstyle. It's a neat twist that adds variety rather than simply feeling like a one-to-one copy of Konami's formula. The enemies themselves are pretty cool. You face off against bats, wolves, spirits, zombies, and knife-wielding killers that stalk the streets, probably Jack the Ripper. The designs are creepy but distinct, and their placement is carefully crafted to test your platforming and timing skills. Bosses are equally memorable, including ghoulish apparitions and ultimately Dracula. Whilst each encounter does require patience and pattern recognition, compared to Castlevania's often punishing difficulty, Master of Darkness feels challenging but a little bit more approachable. Graphically, Master of Darkness is one of the most polished titles on the Master System. Sprites are large and detailed, with Dr. Social animated smoothly and enemies distinct and menacing. The backgrounds are richly atmospheric, filled with that gothic details like gravestones, stone arches, and moonlight skies. For an 8-bit system, it captures the mood incredibly well, giving players a sense of foreboding as they creep through the stages. It stands as proof as that even in late in the Master System's life, developers could squeeze impressive visuals out of the hardware. However, at the time of its release, Master of Darkness didn't make a huge splash, mostly because of circumstances beyond its control. By 1992, as we've earlier said, the Master System was already being phased out of many markets, overshadowed by both the NES and the Mega Drive itself. As a result, few players had the chance to experience when it was new, and those who did, however, often recognised as a high-quality action title with impressive presentation and strong gameplay. And today, it's considered one of the Master System's true hidden gems. Retro gamers and collectors often praise it as one of the best action platformers on the console, and some even argue it stands shoulder to shoulder with early Castlevania entries, but let me know what you think about that in the comments. But for Master System fans, Master of Darkness remains a standout title, a game that proved Sega 8-bit console could deliver rich atmosphere and polished gameplay right to the end of its life cycle. Rocky. Rocky on Sega Master System is one of those titles that has perfect sense on paper. By the mid-1980s, Sylvester Stallone's Rocky movies were a cultural landmark, tales of grit, determination, and the underdog triumph that resonated worldwide. Sega, looking to capitalise on the franchise's popularity, released Rocky for the Master System in 1987. What players got was a boxing game that tried to capture the cinematic intensity of the films while fitting it into the framework of a simple arcade-style fighter. And though it did have some exciting ideas and the name recognition of one of Hollywood's biggest icons, Rocky ultimately landed somewhere between novelty and frustration, remembered more for its spectacle than its depth. The premise of the game follows the story beats of the films loosely. You step into the gloves of Rocky himself, or it'd be a bit silly if you didn't, facing off against three iconic opponents in the series: Apollo Creed, Clubber Lang, and Ivan Drago. It's a natural progression through Rocky's cinematic career, from his grudge match with Apollo to his showdown with Mr. T's ferocious Clubber Lang, and finally the climactic battle with Dolph Lundgren's towering Ivan Drago from Rocky IV. Each fight serves as a stage, and the game gets progressively harder as you work your way through them, with Drago posing the ultimate test of endurance and timing. Gameplay is a mix of boxing simulation and arcade-style fighting. The controls give you the ability to throw jabs, hooks and uppercuts, while also guarding against incoming blows. On the surface, it does sound straightforward, but the real challenge comes from mastering the timing and spacing. The game demands more precise inputs, and you can't just mash buttons and hope to win. Instead, you need to anticipate your opponent's moves, exploit openings, and carefully balance offense and defense. For players used to fast-paced arcade fighters, Rocky's gonna feel a bit sluggish, but for those who invested the time, there was depth to be found. There was also a training mode which is included between matches, adding another layer of strategy. Before each big fight, you participate in mini-games designed to improve Rocky's speed, strength, or stamina. These training sequences, like punching a speed bag or working on footwork, not only broke up the game's pacing, but also influenced Rocky's stats in the upcoming match. This was a clever way to connect the film's iconic training montages to the gameplay itself, giving players a chance to feel like they were truly preparing for battle. And for a mid-80s boxing game, it was surprisingly forward-thinking. For the opponents themselves, they were also a highlight. Apollo fights with quick combinations and punishes careless mistakes, forcing you to stay sharp. Clubber Lang is a powerhouse whose punch is devastating if they connect, demanding that you learn to block effectively. Ivan Drago, due to his portrayal in Rocky IV, is the ultimate juggernaut, with reach and strength that make him feel like a nearly unsurmountable foe. Each foe's got their distinct patterns, meaning players had to adapt rather than rely on the same tactic for each match. It really is Punch-Out, the Master System version. Visually, Rocky makes good use of Master System's hardware. The fighters are large and well animated, filling the screen with detailed sprites that actually resemble their movie counterparts in a recognisable way. The boxing rings are simple but colourful, with spotlights and crowd details add to the atmosphere. And between matches, still images inspired by the films help carry the cinematic theme. For 1987, it was an impressive presentation, and the game certainly captured the larger-than-life feel of the Rocky franchise. But despite its strengths, Rocky has its flaws. The precision required for inputs can make the game feel overly difficult, especially for casual players. The limited roster, just 3 opponents, also restricts replay value, making it feel like a short-lived novelty rather than a fully fleshed-out sports game. Like, once you've mastered the timing and defeated Drago, there's little incentive to return beyond bragging rights. At the time, this lack of depth drew criticism, especially when compared to other sports or fighting games that offered more variety. In retrospect though, Rocky does remain a fascinating piece of Sega history. It was one of the earliest attempts to bring the energy of a blockbuster movie into the home console experience, and for many Master System owners it stood out as a flashy cinematic title unlike anything else in the system. While it may not have the staying power of Punch-Out on the NES or the complexity of later boxing games, it captured the grit and determination of Rocky Balboa in a way that felt authentic for fans of the film. Penguin Land. Now this is one for me. Penguin Land is one from me, so deal with it. This was my childhood. Now when Sega was looking to diversify the Master System library in the mid to late 80s, puzzle games were an important piece of the puzzle, pun intended. And among the creative releases was Penguin Land, a quirky yet charming title that combined puzzle platforming with an unusual premise. Developed by Sega, the game was a port of an arcade title but gained wider recognition on the Master System, where it became one of the most unique offerings. While it never reached the iconic status of platform juggernauts like Alex Kidd, who I hate, or Sonic the Hedgehog, it carved out its own niche thanks to its original mechanics, colourful presentation, and deceptively challenging gameplay, goddamn right. The premise of Penguin Land is simple but endearing. You play as a determined penguin tasked with safely guiding a fragile egg down a series of icy caverns. The penguin must navigate a vertical labyrinth of blocks, avoiding hazards while ensuring the egg remains intact. Instead of racing to the right like in most platformers of the era, the focus here is on carefully descending while manipulating the environment to carve out a safe path for the egg. This reverse platformer design was highly original at the time and made the game stand out among Sega's early Master System catalogue. Gameplay revolves around digging through blocks and strategically planning your descent. The penguin can push the egg downwards by removing blocks below it, but missteps can cause the egg to fall too far, shattering on impact, which makes me cry. This introduces a delicate balance of speed and caution. You want to progress quickly, but reckless digging often results in disaster. The caverns also fill with enemies like polar bears and hostile birds that can destroy the egg or defeat the penguin if they come into contact. Unlike many puzzle games, timing and reflexes plays just as big a role as strategy, forcing players to think on their feet. One of the game's strengths is level design. Each stage introduces new challenges such as precariously stacked blocks, moving enemies, and tricky layouts that force you to think several moves ahead. Some levels encourage experimentation, while others feel like tightly designed puzzles that require precision. With 50 stages in total, I never did this difficulty escalates steadily, ensuring that players are always learning and applying new strategies. For its time, this was an impressive amount of content, and the game rewarded perseverance with a real sense of accomplishment when you successfully delivered the egg to safety. Visually, the game is bright, cartoon style that matches its light-hearted premise. The penguin stands out really well, and while the enemies have just enough charm to feel whimsical rather than menacing. The icy cavern backgrounds are fairly repetitive, but the colourful blocks and animated egg movements keep the screen lively. They may have not pushed the Master System to its limits, but they certainly had a clean, crisp appeal that made the game accessible and inviting. Reception at the time was generally positive, especially among puzzle fans. Critics praised the originality of the concept and the addictive just one more try gameplay loop. However, some found it punishingly difficult, particularly in the later levels where the margin for error becomes razor thin. Casual players might have bounced off its challenging learning curve, but for those who stuck with it, Penguin Land offered a rewarding and unique experience. Looking back today, Penguin Land feels one of the Master System's hidden gems. It may not have the flashiness of Sega's more iconic franchises, but its inventive blend of puzzle mechanics and platforming action makes it a fascinating part of the system's history. It stands as a reminder of Sega's willingness to experiment during the 8-bit era, delivering a game that was both clever and ahead of its time, and had a penguin. And finally, Psycho Fox. Psycho Fox for the Sega Master System is one of those quirky, charming titles that showcases Sega's creativity during the late 80s. Released in 1989, it was developed by Vic Tokai, a studio that often experimented with unusual mechanics in their games. Now at first glance, it looks like a straightforward platformer in the vein of Mario or Alex Kidd, but beneath its cartoony surface lies an inventive and sometimes strange experience that gave Master System owners something unique. With its shape-shifting protagonist, slapstick humour and surprisingly clever mechanics, Psycho Fox became a standout title on the Sega 8-bit console. The game puts players in control of the Psycho Fox, a martial artist who sets out to defeat the evil Mad Fox Daimyo. Instead of sticking to a single identity, Psycho Fox has the unusual ability to transform into different animals by using magical items found throughout the stages. At the press of a button after collecting a transformation scroll, he could become a hippo, a monkey, or a tiger, each form offering unique abilities that help players navigate different challenges. This shape-shifting gimmick was innovative at the time and helped the game stand apart from many other mascot-style platformers flooding the market. Each transformation has a specific advantage that adds depth to platforming. As the hippo, Psycho Fox can smash through certain obstacles with brute strength, though his slower movement makes him more vulnerable. The monkey allows him to climb vertical surfaces, perfectly exploring hidden routes and reaching higher areas. The tiger is fast and powerful, offering speed and strong attacks to mow through enemies. Of course, players can just stick with the default fox form, which provide balanced movement and decent jumping. But learning when to use each transformation is key to mastering the game's design. Another feature that sets Psycho Fox apart is the inclusion of a sidekick, a small bird-like creature named Birdfly. Birdfly can be carried by Psycho Fox and thrown at enemies to defeat them, functioning like a projectile weapon. Players can also use Birdfly to hit item boxes from afar, which adds an extra layer of strategy. While it's easy to forget about the little companion, using him wisely can make tricky sections of the game more manageable, especially since enemies often appear in awkward spots. Visually, the game has a bright, colourful art style that emphasises that cartoon humour. Characters are exaggerated and comical, with goofy facial expressions and silly animations that gave the game a light-hearted feel. Levels range from grassy plains to deserts, swamps and icy landscapes, all rendered in a cheerful palette that makes the game inviting. And the Master System's graphical capabilities are put to good use here, as the sprites are large and expressive without overwhelming the screen. The game doesn't quite rival the polish of Nintendo's top platformers, but it does capture unique personality that makes it memorable. One of the biggest criticisms of Psycho Fox, however, is its somewhat sluggish controls. The physics feel floaty, with Psycho Fox sliding forward after landing, making precision platforming tricky at times. This does give the game a bit of a learning curve, as players need to adjust to the unusual handling compared to other platforms of the era. Some players found that frustrating, while others embrace it as part of the game's charm. The transformations and creative mechanics help balance out this flaw, ensuring the game still fresh and fun. Now, Psycho Fox was never as popular as Sonic the Hedgehog or Alex Kidd, but it did develop a cult following among Master System fans. Its quirky mechanics and humorous presentation make it stand out, and its transformation gimmick foreshadowed later games where characters could change forms to overcome obstacles. While it didn't spawn a direct sequel, the game's spirit lived on in later Vic Tokai titles such as Decap Attack on the Sega Genesis, which shares a similar sense of humour and gameplay style. Overall, Psycho Fox is a real gem on the Master System, a colourful, inventive platformer that mixes traditional side-scrolling action with unusual mechanics and cartoon charm. Its unique identity, fueled by shape-shifting, a throwable sidekick, and playful presentation, ensured that it stood out in the crowded platformer landscape of the late 80s. And for players who could adjust those quirky controls, it offered a rewarding and distinctly Sega experience that remains fondly remembered today. And that's it, 7 Master System gems. Let me know what you think. Did I get this list right? Are the ones I need to be talking about? Put them in the comments below. And as I said at the beginning of the video, if you really think I deserve it, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content. I'll see you again in a few days. My name's been Danny, take care, chase your dreams.